if they were able to access that and be that resilient to access joy when they were experiencing what they experienced, and I have the level of freedom and the level of opportunity and the level of support and connection that I have now, you better believe I'm going to access my joy. Welcome to Another Way Through, a podcast featuring stories of folks who used to trade their authenticity for safety and acceptance and have found their way to lives filled with greater peace, joy, and freedom. These stories will remind you and affirm for you that if you're thinking of following that inner voice telling you that there's something bigger out there for you, even if it's a little bit scary, that there's another way through for you too. Let's get into the episode. Welcome back, folks. Today on this episode of Another Way Through, I'm here for a solo episode to talk about one of my favorite topics. It's going to sound a little heavy at first, but we'll definitely get to some powerful ways that we can move through this, that we can reconnect with our joy and all of that. But I'm going to talk a little bit about ancestral trauma today, generational trauma, which I think gets thrown around quite a bit, and I really want to talk about it from the lens and perspective of both psychology and human development, but also from the lens of communities of color, people of color, folks that come from more collective cultures than the individualistic cultures that often our society really centers on. The conversation around healing, the conversation around therapy and inner work can often be very individual. So I want to talk about it from a lens that's more in context of the ways that our communities really not only experience things, but move through the world, and more things that are actually important to us that perhaps for some folks that come from more individualistic cultures, not taking into consideration all of the ancestral pieces and all of the context that we have, maybe isn't quite as important for them. So hopefully this will be very helpful as you move through whatever you're holding, especially as we are in the holiday season, getting out of it. A lot of family stuff can come up, a lot of emotions can come up, and this can be really, really powerful work that you can do not only for yourself, but for your entire lineage, past and future, and present. So I want to talk a little bit about cycles. I know a lot of people talk about breaking generational cycles, and we kind of use that as like a catch-all for things. And so I'm just going to break it down a little bit more. So often if we're breaking cycles, it's kind of acknowledging the fact that if we don't, then we're often generation to generation just repeating cycles. If we were to just continue the default path and continue doing what, humans come to this earth doing, they are brought here in the context of a family by two people, by a set of extended family. I personally come from a very huge extended family on both sides, my maternal and paternal sides, mom one of 9, dad one of 7. So I've just a lot of people that I came up with, around, connected to, kind of feeling the feelings of, and came up with a particular role to play, a particular set of experiences in that context, like a puzzle piece within a very, very large puzzle. And so we come to this earth, I think some people in the more spiritual sense say that we choose our parents, we choose our family, because we know that when we're coming to this planet, we're going to experience a particular curriculum that is going to set us on a particular path. And while I want to acknowledge for myself, as well as many of the people that I work with, many of the people in my communities, we have dealt with really difficult things growing up. And so to say you chose it can feel really sometimes harmful and a little bit like blaming the person that's going through really tough things. And I say that with so much compassion and love. And if we can sort of pull up from it and understand it at a more kind of dynamic, what are the dynamics at play that can help us get some more perspective, even if we're going through something really, really tender in the moment. This is not to say it's all your fault. It's to say it is the journey that we're all meant to work through and move through on this earth, in earth school, if you will. And so if you come to this world, as I did, from two different cultures that experience a lot of trauma, collective experiences of colonialism, slavery, moving to experiencing different kind of imperialist systems that they were navigating. And a lot of survival had to happen. So grateful for the fact that all of my ancestors survived everything and overcame everything that they did in order for me to even be here. But one of the things I like to talk about, because it comes up so much with my clients, I've heard like so many of my clients say some flavor of this exact same thing. Like, they're always high achieving, doing really, really well for themselves, but reach a breaking point where they're like, what I've been doing, I don't really care about doing this anymore. I want to shift to something new. I want to create something for myself that isn't just doing the thing that I feel like I'm supposed to do because I have to be successful. I have to be the one that does the best and like does it without complaint and does it with a smile on my face. And one of my clients has said, you know, if I were to say, in this case, leave this job and go and do something of my own, start my own career path or start my own entrepreneurial pursuit, that I would be, all of my family's sacrifices would be for naught. Generations of folks who had to overcome so much so that she could be in this position that she was in, that all of that would be for nothing if she gave it up and went to get a different kind of job. Like, that's the fear, the level of pressure, the level of anxiety that she was holding. And what I said to her was that your family, all of those folks that sacrificed so much and overcame so much, they didn't do that so that you could be in this nonprofit job, high paying, you know, doing well for yourself. They did it so you could be free. They did it so that you would have access to opportunities, freedom, joy, experiences that they never got to. And I think when they had to spend so much of their lives in survival mode, oftentimes, I know all of us, maybe not all of us, many of us have experiences with folks in our family that can be really, really hard on us, really tough, really strict, really kind of rigid in how they view the world. And often that comes from a place of needing to survive and not feeling safe. They didn't actually have the same access to opportunity, the same access to freedom that we have. And so they're going to project that view onto us and say, well, no, you can't do that, or you shouldn't go get that kind of job because that's not safe, or that's not going to, what are other people going to think, or what if you don't make it, or you can't, you know, pursue love in a way that looks non-traditional because that is not acceptable, or our community is not going to accept you. And they're often worried about how they will be perceived with you as their child, as an extension of them, right? And so oftentimes we just, from birth and through our upbringing and into adulthood, kind of internalize, we soak in, we just soak up all of those fears and beliefs and anxieties from our family. It's literally passed down it's literally passed down epigenetically as well. One of the things that, it's funny, people talk about this, there's like this whole thing, I think it's going around social media, where it's explained poorly, but it is really true, especially for women. So women, when we were born, we have all of the eggs in our body that we're ever going to have. And so when I was a fetus inside my mother, I had all of those eggs. And when I was one of my mom's eggs, she was inside her mother when she was being born. And so at some point, at least half of me was inside my grandmother's body before I ever was even, you know, thought of, before I even got here. And so at a cellular level, what she experienced, what she went through, what she felt, I inherited that quite literally. And so for all of us, whether you're a woman or not, you have these passed down experiences, passed down worldviews about how things are and the way it is. And oftentimes I think about, you know, everyone has their own, but you often see it more readily and easily when you see it in other people's patterns. But people that just have kind of the same repeating thing over and over again, they're like, oh, this keeps happening to me. You know, I keep finding people that treat me like this, or I keep dating people that treat me this way, or I keep ending up in jobs where they keep treating me horribly and then they keep firing me and I can never keep a job, whatever it is, right? Insert your whatever pattern that is. I sometimes say, well, that doesn't happen to me, actually. And I have my own shit, but every single person's repeated patterns is their own, is because they have things that they have come to this earth to resolve and try and actually finally work through. And so often when I say we are repeating cycles, if we don't break them and start new ones, we're repeating the same kinds of behaviors, coping mechanisms, and repression or suppression of emotional experiences that our parents and grandparents and great grandparents experienced. So one of the things that kind of blew my mind, that, I've been doing this work, deep healing work, for over 7 years, 8 years now. And my therapist, who is a godsend, and is a somatic therapist, I did EMDR therapy for quite some time, still doing it off and on. And one of the things she shared with me was that when you experience an emotion, especially those that are really, really difficult, like if you're being triggered, for example, it is, say it's anger. It is attached to every other time in your life that you've experienced that emotion in the past. So every time that you've experienced anger, and I think this goes even more strongly for those that you have had difficulty with. So if you haven't been able to move through anger, or you haven't been able to move through grief, or you haven't been able to move through sadness, sometimes when something kind of comes up that might seem like in the moment lead to this sort of disproportionate reaction, it's often because it's attached to all the other times in your life in the past where you haven't fully been able to complete that, where you fully haven't been able to move through and complete the emotional cycle. And so it's kind of repeating and stuck. And each time it comes up, you might lean into your same coping mechanisms to actually avoid feeling the feeling. And then that stuffs it down more. And then the next time a trigger comes up, and so on and so forth, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And the way I've been thinking about this very recently, especially with the last point I just made about the epigenetic connection and the way that we were attached to our ancestors and they're actually living in our bodies, that I'm not only experiencing that lack of ability to complete that anger cycle or that sadness or that grief cycle for myself, I'm also experiencing it for my mom when she repressed those emotions and wasn't able to feel them, and my grandmother when she wasn't able to completely feel them because it wasn't safe to do so, or for whatever reasons she wasn't taught how to do it, she wasn't given the space to do it. And so me, being the cycle breaker that I am, deciding that I'm going to be the one to actually feel my feelings and actually hold them and move through them. The reason it can be so tough and so challenging and feel so big oftentimes is not only because you're feeling every time that you've felt it and not experienced it or not fully completed in your life, but for generations and generations and generations in the past. And I haven't heard people talk about generational trauma in that particular way. I've heard it of just like, oh, this just keeps happening. And it's actually the responsibility that we have to actually be the ones to feel the feeling and actually release it. In a recent breathwork training that I had, I've done a few different ones, and I'm actually completing my third. But this summer, I was doing 5 days straight of really deep breathwork journeys for myself, and they end up usually like connecting into each other. So if you go really deep one day, the next day it kind of picks up where you left off and goes deeper and goes deeper. And I had a lot of visions and connections with my ancestors. Messages come through, kind of images that I just know to be, they were sent to me as just memories, just things to know, information, knowledge for me to pick up, knowledge for me to have. And the sort of saying, the message that I walked away with, I think, midway through that experience was, I can no longer hold these emotions for you, but I can feel them and help you release them, right? So it's not mine to hold forevermore because it never was mine. Some of it is, and some of it's mine to work through in this lifetime. But the things that my mother, my grandmother, my father, my grandfather, all of them did not get to complete in their lifetime, me being the one that's actually willing to face it means I'm facing all of that never got resolved, that never got faced. And it's a lot. It can be really, really, really tough. But what I'm realizing is it's not just mine to hold and feel, but to actually be the one that's releasing it. I'm releasing it not only on my behalf, but on behalf of everyone in my lineage. And the level of sort of freedom and responsibility and pride that gives me, I think helps me continue on this path that can be really challenging at times, but I'm not doing it only for myself. I'm doing it for all of them and all of those that come after me. And so if we don't learn how to fully process our emotions, like be with them, and usually they're just sensations in our bodies that need to be presenced by us, need to be experienced by us, and they actually move through a lot more quickly than we think. Though when you're holding a lot of trauma, they can be really, really tough. However, it's the running away, pushing away, suppressing, compartmentalizing, coping mechanisming away of those emotions that make them even harder and tougher and more difficult to fully let go of. And so all of this to say, this level of just sort of the weight and the gravity and the level of importance that is riding on you actually doing your work, on you actually healing, and not just continuing down the same default path and just sort of turning a blind eye to things and saying, okay, this is fine. I'll just keep doing this the way, this is the way it is in my family. Like, this is the way things have always been done, which often is what I think a lot of us hear from generations past. Is like, this is just how it is. This is how we are, as a sort of rationale, and I don't want to say, but kind of excuse to sort of keep ignoring things that need to finally be addressed. And so for me, as someone who really, really early on in my life had some really clear, I always had a very clear perspective on what was right and what was wrong from an emotional perspective of like, hey, I'm looking around and this is happening, or this harm was done to me. I'm going to actually speak up about it because that's what you're supposed to do, right? Like, that is what I am told, that I'm taught. I went to Catholic school growing up. Like, I was taught all of these things. And then when I did speak up about it, about abuse in my family, I was, by a select few, luckily my parents did believe me, and do what they could to be there for me. My extended family, however, ended up having reactions to everything but the situation at hand. There was an incident that was, burned into my memory, into my psyche when I was very, very young, of all of my extended family essentially fighting one another, having a physical brawl in reaction to me speaking up for myself. And as a 10-year-old, how I took that on to mean it was not okay for me to speak up for myself, that my needs didn't matter, that things that were done that were harmful to me, like, I don't know what to tell you, girl, that's just on you. Like, all of those things that I took on for many, many years, that later at this point in my life, at this stage, and with this knowledge about how ancestral and generational trauma works, I just deeply understand that they were all going through like an emotional sort of glitch, an emotional sort of breakdown where they couldn't possibly be there for me in a way that they never experienced showing up for themselves or being loved or protected in the way that they needed when they were young. And it is not an excuse, because really they fucked up. They really messed that up. And I hold them accountable for that. And I hold them accountable for that in my own heart. However, at this stage in my healing journey, I'm able to have a level of compassion and understanding for what led to that. What led to that had nothing to do with me and the fact that I wasn't deserving of love and protection and care, but the fact that for so many generations in the past, there had been incidents of harm done and people were unable to reckon with it or unable to really deal with it. And here I come as a little girl, and I was that reckoning for my family. And it's funny, I just had my cousin in town and visit me, and something that she shared with me that was so beautiful is, she just said that she has this idea or this concept in her head that always came through for her that was just like, justice for Erin. And I've been sitting with the idea of justice for my little self, justice for the little version of me that didn't get the kind of love and protection and support that she needed from those that were meant to support and love me, and that it is my responsibility to grieve that, fully feel all of those emotions, and really deeply acknowledge her pain and her fear and her anxiety that is very valid, that comes from that experience of trauma, and also say that it stops with me. It stops here. We're not going to continue passing this on. We're not going to continue repressing this and actually putting the wool over our eyes and saying, oh, we're just family. Oh, this is just fine. This just happens. And like, that was a long time ago. We're going to just act like it didn't happen because that's what my experience was. But I'm actually going to be the one to say, I'm willing to face it. I'm willing to be with all of those really difficult emotions, and I'm going to actually shift and do something different. And I'm going to expect that what love and support and care looks like in my life looks like what that little girl who always knew what right from wrong looked like. She gets that. She gets the right version of it for me. And so by doing this work, by doing my own work, I am interrupting a pattern that would, if I hadn't, continue on for years and years and generations. It keeps rolling downhill until you stop it. And I've seen it. I see it in my family. I've seen it in other families where people who don't face their stuff, their kids end up having to face it. And then if they don't, then it's their kids. And so I am doing this work not only for me so that I can live more carefree and lighthearted and have access to joy and all those things, but so that I unlock that for whoever is coming next, you know, God willing, my own children in the future, that they have access to a level of freedom and experience that I didn't necessarily get as a young person, but that I am creating for myself now as an adult. And so all of that to say, with this very, you know, heaviness that we can sit with ancestral and generational trauma, I want to talk about also what we can do to unlock the full range of what we inherited. We didn't only inherit the bad stuff. We didn't only inherit the trauma. We didn't only inherit survival programming that keeps us stuck. We inherited so much more than that. We just have to kind of peel through the layers and access what is rightfully ours. And so I'm going to talk about 3 different concepts today that we can tap into from an ancestral perspective that are actually going to move us forward and not only keep us stuck in old ways and old cycles. So the first is ancestral protection. I talk a lot about how, I don't know, there's stats on like, you know, however many generations it had to be that brought you here. It's like thousands of people that had to come together in order for you to even exist. And again, adding on top of that, for those of us that come from communities who have survived a lot, who have survived genocide, slavery, colonization, all of the above, right? To be here, in addition to just the mathematical part of it, it is a miracle that you even are watching this, that you are living and breathing right now. And you as a living miracle have that sort of, that magic in your bones. So that ability to survive, that ability to overcome those prayers, those wishes, those hopes, and those dreams. I often see the quote that my grandmother's prayers are still protecting me today. You have ancestors. I read this in a book called Spirits Are from the Water, a book about African ancestral veneration practices and reclaiming those African spiritual practices that were taken from us, that were shunned by the colonizers. And there are ancestors, the ones that, yes, you know, the ones that you were born into, that you know, maybe have passed on, or, you know, like, for example, for me, my grandmothers are they're here with me in this moment. They are watching over me constantly, and I know that. But this idea that came from this book was there are ancestors that you never met that are protecting you, that are rooting for you, that see what you're doing and are cheering you on. Even if you have perhaps a difficult experience with some people in your family and some of your ancestors, and maybe even all of them that you know, trust that there are some that maybe you never even got to meet, that you never even heard of, that are watching over you, that are cheering for you, that see the virtue in everything that you're doing, in your dreams, and all of the work that you're doing and the legacy that you're leaving in this lifetime, and they just want you to succeed. So can we call on the protection of our ancestors and not just the things that they left us that were hard, but the prayers and the well wishes and the ways that they're guiding us. And for me, the way that I can think about this and really ground it in and might be helpful for you is to think about moments where I was really, maybe doing something I shouldn't have been doing, or doing something kind of unsafe or out there, right? In our 20s, we always do things. And even, more recently, I remember just that, I won't share the details, but I got into a car accident. And I remember viscerally, I was in the back seat. I remember viscerally thinking, I was like, this is it. I don't know, like this might be my time. And the nature of this accident was so scary. It was so just like, the only couple of things that could happen, spinning on the highway, are we crash into a wall or other cars crash into us. Like, that is the only thing I saw. And those of us that were in the car just spun and stopped in the middle of the highway, facing backwards. All of the cars had stopped. We were very, clear of any barriers or any, what are those things called? Of the side wall of the highway. And we all, the three of us in the car, got out without a scratch. And I just think about how much, I have many examples, not too many more car accidents, luckily for me, but examples of times where things did not look good. Things were not looking like they were going to work out for me, but God, my ancestors, spirit, plucked me out of those situations and ensured that I was safe, because it wasn't my time yet. There were things that I was meant to do on this earth that I haven't yet done. And so it's still a bit of time left because of those people and those spiritual connections that are watching over me and that are protecting me. And I deeply believe that the same is true for you if you're watching this, and you can think back and count on those examples where that was true for you as well. And we can actually proactively call on the support of whatever your beliefs are, right? If this doesn't resonate with you, maybe just call on good energy, right? But for me, it is this ancestral piece to know that they didn't leave. They never fully left. They're always around us, whether we have pictures of them or we just hold their image or the love that we have for them in our heart, that we can call on their protection and support when we feel like we're alone, when we feel like we're the only ones that are in that situation. And trust that you are never alone, that you actually have those prayers of protection from your ancestors that either you knew and were close with and had a good relationship with, or those that you never knew, right? And so I often call on healed ancestors, folks who have done their work and moved through as they move to the other side, and call on their energy to support me as I am facing whatever challenges are coming up. The second is, in addition to survival programming and, lack of ability to process our emotions, right? That I think a lot of us can say, generationally, we can look back and say they didn't get those things. We also inherited a lot of ancestral wisdom and ancestral gifts. And so even in a very sort of nuanced way around our experiences early on that might have been difficult and traumatic, there were things, I kind of taking a little bit of a sidebar, there's this book that I've read multiple times called The Big Leap, and it talks about this idea of a unique ability, this idea of something that you were always very, very good at uniquely, something that people came to you for or that they saw in you. And I remember thinking to myself, I don't want my unique ability to be rooted in my trauma. I felt like I should not have that be the case. But for whatever, even if that is true, I had those experiences early on that led to a set of skills and capabilities that maybe some people do not have. And for me, that is the ability to really understand the different dynamics between people, between what they're saying on a surface level and what's really going on beneath, and mediating and navigating these different difficult emotional experiences, all of that has led to my ability to be the kind of coach that I am, the kind of person that can sit with people and really face the deepest, darkest, the lightest, the most joyful, all of the emotions in between. I can sit with people through that because nothing really phases me. Nothing really rattles me at this point because of my own life experiences, and those abilities to be with emotion, kind of see past what people are saying on the surface, I think come from more than just my trauma and my experience, but I know that my ancestors brought me here to be the one to be able to do that within my family, within my lineage, and my ability to connect with certain people, both that I'm related to and that I'm not, right? Family and chosen family, right? The people that I'm still in touch with in my family, and the people that I've picked up along the way that have become that close to me, that have become the people that I trust and that trust me, I'm able to share these gifts with them, right? And every single one of us, I'm sure that there's something that you know that you were innately gifted with, and it was in part given to you so that you could navigate everything that you needed to navigate, but also so that when one day you were ready, you could share that wisdom and share those gifts with the world in a way that feels right to you. And so thinking about what was passed on and what we inherited, not only as the trauma, but also the gifts and the wisdom. And finally, when we think about all of the overcoming and the survival and the struggle and the challenge, I think a lot about how much my grandmothers had to go through with raising so many children. Jeez, I cannot imagine. And also, I think about the hope that they had, the hope that they had for the future, and just how important it is that we access our joy, our ancestral joy, because even with all of that they were dealing with, all of that they were overcoming, all of that they were holding, they experienced many, many moments of joy. I can think of and viscerally remember the laughter of every single one of my family members. And if they were able to access that and be that resilient to access joy when they were experiencing what they experienced, and I have the level of freedom and the level of opportunity and the level of support and connection that I have now, you better believe I'm going to access my joy here and now in this lifetime, that it is my responsibility to myself, but also to them, that I not only do the deep inner work, the hard stuff. Oh, I love it. I love to cry. I love to be in my feelings and feel them and move through them, and to read all the books and to go to therapy and go to the beach and release my emotions to the ocean and ask Mother Gaia to help me, all of it, all of that. And I am going to be meeting up with my friends and just laughing. I'm going to twerk with my friends for hours if that's what we need to do. I'm going to go out and just have adventures and be joyful and see the world, because so many that came before me were unable to do so. And they get to see it through my eyes. They get to experience life in the way that I get to experience life, with the level of support and emotional freedom and emotional expression. I get to talk to you all about all of this stuff and just say whatever the hell I want to say. They didn't get to do that. And so as much as I think we often think about, where I come back to that quote from my client of, it's going to be their sacrifice was for naught. No, their sacrifice was for everything, was for you to be able to do what you're doing now. And they're still with you, even if in some form or fashion, maybe the, less evolved version of some of our family members or our ancestors would project onto us restriction and project onto us like, no, don't do that because it's not safe. There is also the version, sort of evolved higher self version of all of them, that knows and is looking to us, those that are the cycle starters, the folks that are experiencing freedom and joy and peace, true inner peace. They love it. They love to see it. They love to experience it through us, to live vicariously through us. And so that is our responsibility as well, not only for ourselves, but for everyone that came before and everyone that's coming after, to access our ancestral joy. It is our birthright. And so with that, I hope that as you're working through very, very challenging, very, very difficult things, that you can hold both the light and the dark, the light and the heavy at the same time, because all of it is what you inherited. All of it is what you were meant to experience and meant to bring forward for not only you, but for your entire lineage. And so thank you for being here. I love you. If you're listening to this, I'm sending you so much love. And if this is something you want to dive deeper into, if you want to experience this work on a much deeper level, I definitely invite you to tap in with me, to reach out for a free consult call, because this is the work that I really, really dive into in a really nuanced way with my clients. It's really understanding, what are they meant to do? What are they meant to experience in this lifetime? What legacy are they meant to leave? And what might they need to work through, peel back the layers of all the stuff to be able to access this, and just to know and feel viscerally how much their ancestors are rooting them on and cheering for them, is the work that I love that I get to do. And so feel free to reach out, and also tap in below with comments. Make sure to like and subscribe wherever you're getting this podcast. Follow me on YouTube and follow me on Instagram at Tap Into Your Wellspring. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you next time.